Hello everyone and welcome back to Football Manager 2018 and this experiment where we're taking a look at what would happen if you destroyed Manchester United Football Club. Now when we left off last time, they had finished their slide right to the bottom of League Football, ending up 12th in League 2 before finally bouncing back as title winners in League 2 and going back into League 1. That's 5 years into the experiment and we've already seen them begin their upturn in form. They've got rich finances now. They should be coming back as a real force in English football, but we don't quite know how much money they've got. But I can at least now finally show you their bank balance, and you can see in the in-game stats here, which haven't been working for a little while, that reputation back up to around 4,000. Now the minimum level is 2,500 for a team that's in English kind of football, possibly in the Vanoramas, that kind of area. So they're doing well on that front. Their club attendance is quite high, higher than their stadium, but their minimum attendance quite low, but it can go up to 60,000. So reasonable stats there. In terms of finances though, they are doing very well. £375 million, but they don't have a sugar daddy. Good transfer budget, good wage budget. Facilities, pretty mediocre. Still got that sand pitch, which they're not getting rid of. I think I might have accidentally just clicked that they've got a roof. I'm going to take that away. And everything else kind of as you would expect. But interesting that they've got £375 million from somewhere. I imagine that's inbuilt stuff in the game like sponsorships and the rest of it, which will keep coming in regardless of who the owner is, because obviously they've got their kit sponsors and things like that, which I didn't change for this experiment. So I imagine that upturn in form is only just beginning and they could be coming right the way back to the top of the football pyramid. So what we're going to do today is go forward 5 years in time. We'll take another look at their in-game stats, how they performed through the seasons, and if they've managed to get back to the top tier of English football. Well, this is 1 year ahead, and I'm going to go through this a bit quicker than I have in previous episodes, because we do have 5 seasons to go through, and you can already see that they finished second in League 1. So after consecutive relegations, 3 in a row, they've now had 2 promotions in a row, and 1 more will actually take them back up into the Premier League. So they're doing very well here. Steve Sidwell now with 2 consecutive promotions, one of them a league title, still captained by Frankie Kent, but Steve Mooney, now their major player from Benin, 28 years old, and he got 5 goals in 15 games in League 1 after joining them presumably in January after struggling at Crystal Palace for a little while. A very good signing there from the looks of it. And if we take a look at their senior squad schedule, then you can see that it went pretty well off the bat before that defeat to Wigan, and then they had a poor run of results here before coming back properly. Doing well, getting through in the FA Cup, a little rough patch here, losing in the Checker Trade. Went through in the second round of the FA Cup, 4-0. Even beat Everton 1-0, a Premier League team in the FA Cup third round. A few defeats around that. They actually lost 4 consecutive League One games and were finally knocked out by Blackburn 1-0 at Old Trafford. A few more wins in the league, a nice actual run of results here, which secured them their automatic promotion, second in the league. So doing pretty well in that sort of position. And if we have a look at their transfer history for the previous season, you can see they spent £3.1 million, which is a big step down from when they spent £18 million the previous season, but financial fair play may have something to do with that. Their biggest signing that season was George Hurst, not Jeff Hurst, picked up 24 years old, signed from Oxford in League 1, so a straight league signing there and doing a decent job. So they're doing alright now. That's 2 consecutive promotions. The question is, can they get a third? Well, as you can see, this season did not go quite as well as the previous ones. They finished 19th, only just avoiding relegation in the Championship. Still progression. They've managed to hold their position, which is pretty good. You can see their reputation now national, up to 2.5 stars. But they have lost Steve Sidwell. Mick McCarthy has come in as manager, and if we look at the managerial records, we can see they're pretty good at hanging on to their managers for a while here. 2 years for Gianfranco Zola, which included 2 straight relegations. And then Steve Sidwell managed to get 2 promotions, a league title in there, but finally was sacked. And he was sacked around Christmas time. So we'll have to look at how the results were doing at that time. But Mick McCarthy has come in. He's got a 46% win ratio, which is a bit down on what Steve Sidwell had. But if we look at the senior squad schedule for that first season in the Championship, you can see it did get off to a really poor start. Their only win was their first game of the season, so they were heading straight to relegation, probably bottom of the table at this point. They managed to go through in the Carabao Cup before losing to Aston Villa, and these results kept on getting worse. The 2 wins there would have given them Sidwell a little reprieve, but this was a point where he got sacked. So many defeats, only 3 wins halfway through the season. New manager comes in, Mick McCarthy of all people, and he gets a good winning run going. They even beat Barnet in the FA Cup third round before losing to Stoke, but a lot of important victories here. And you can see they won 3 on the trot here, which must have been so important. 4 in 5 at the end, and a real significant improvement in their position. And if we have a look at the Championship table, then we can see, if we go back one season, that United actually survived relegation by just 6 points. So those 4 wins that they got in 5 games were ultimately what kept them up. And you have to say the change of management was the only thing that saved United from getting relegated back down to League One. So a smart decision by the board, but can Mick McCarthy lead Manchester United back into the Premier League? Well, once more you can see that Manchester United have not managed to get out of the Championship. Well, actually, we don't know if they do, because they finished 6th in the Championship, so they may well have actually made it out. And Mick McCarthy still in charge of the club, but John Egan, now the captain, the 32-year-old Irishman who they signed from Aston Villa for 165k, doesn't even play every game and yet is captain of the club. You've got Ryan Nyambe, who's English, and he was signed for £1 million from Derby. So a couple of key new players coming in. Tom Jordan, their actual key player, 23-year-old Englishman, signed from Nottingham Forest for £3 million. So a bit of cash being spent now by the club. But if we have a look at this senior squad schedule, then you can see that it's going reasonably well so far. Poor start to the season, really, going out of the Carabao Cup quite early on, but then a few wins with a couple of draws thrown in there, doing reasonably well. Bit of a traffic light kind of form to them. They beat West Ham though 2-1 away from home before losing to Arsenal 2-1 away from home again there. Thiago getting the winning goal in the end. And as we get to the end of this season, the key question is, are they in the playoffs? And as you can see, or in the playoff final rather, as you can see, they beat Ipswich away from home in the second leg. First leg finished 1-1, which is pretty good given they had 10 men. And then they beat them 2-1 despite an 87th minute goal, setting up a nervy finish. And in the playoff final, are Manchester United back in the Premier League? They are. They've beaten Aston Villa 2-0. Sam Gallagher with the goal for them on the hour mark, coming from behind at Wembley to win the match 2-1 in front of 88,000 fans. Although 50,000 of them were away fans, so there are actually more Villa fans than United fans in that Wembley playoff final. But Manchester United will be back in the Premier League for the next season. And if we have a quick look at their transfer history over these seasons, so you can see how they managed to do it, because after spending just £3.3 million, they then spent £28 million on new players. Josh Brownhill being their biggest signing in that first season in the Championship. £5 million they signed him for from Brentford, and he's played a few games, not that many. But the following season they spent £87 million on players. Toby Roberts being their biggest signing, a striker who only got 5 goals in 18 games. You've got other big players in here. There's Jack Mellum for Crystal Palace. If we have a look at him, another striker, 17 in 43, much better return there. But so many players being brought in. They're very young though, which means they have time to develop. Sam Gallagher, a big signing from Blackburn, an established player at 29 years old, chipping in with a goal every other game, which is not bad. But it means they've managed to get in the Premier League, and that will allow them to spend even more money next season. So there you go, Mick McCarthy leading Manchester United back into the Premier League. Well, we've gone another year into the future here, and their first season in the Premier League may not have gone that well because we can already see they've changed management. It's Carlos Carvalhal who is now the manager of Manchester United. And if we look at their senior squad schedule, you can see why. A lot of defeats straight off the bat, including to Wigan, losing their first 3 games, finally picked up a point against Middlesbrough, and their first win came at the end of September, a 2-1 win over Birmingham there, but then lots of defeats following. 1 win over Huddersfield, even more defeats, including 3-0 to City, and these defeats did not get much better. Only 2 wins, and we're into January now, out of the FA Cup as well, to Forest Green Rovers, which is really embarrassing for them to go out at home on penalties in the 3rd round. They did beat Birmingham and then West Brom, back-to-back wins for the first time this season. And their form really picked up. I assume they changed the management around this point, but then loads of defeats at the end of the season against some very big teams. Finally beat Swansea in their last game, but no way that was going to help them. And if we look at the Premier League table for that season, you can see they're only finished 2 points off the bottom, ahead of Birmingham there, but 13 points away from Derby County, which says it all really. If you're finishing 13 points behind Derby, you are going to be relegated. As Chelsea take the title, Manchester United get relegated. And if we go back and have a look at their managerial record, you can see Mick McCarthy got a lot less time than the previous 2 managers, just 1 year, 334 days, 2 days shy, a month shy of his 2-year anniversary, but a 39 win percent, not the best. Sacked in November, which is quite early on. David Weir came in for 18 days, and then Carlos Carvalhal came in. He's got the worst win ratio of them all, and now a relegation to boot, but it looks like he is still in charge at the moment. Transfers this season, only 32 million spent, nowhere near as much as previous seasons, but Kyle Walker-Peters, 1 player brought in, Peter Rawlings, another one, and 3 million raised from the sale of Harvey Barnes. But nothing major there. So we'll just go forward the one last season to take us to the full 5, and then we'll see if they manage to get back into the Premier League. Well, as you can see at the top here, they finished 3rd in the Championship. Carvalhal still in charge of the club. Liam Walsh, the captain of Manchester United, still. They've now got a 3-star reputation, up from 2.5 stars. But if we look at this senior squad schedule, then you can see that their season was a bit patchy at the start. Just 2 wins going into late September before putting on some excellent winning runs, including in the Carabao Cup against Crystal Palace, through against Spurs in the 4th round of the Carabao Cup, as this winning run continued, unbeaten for such a long time before losing to Sheffield Wednesday and then getting knocked out by West Ham from the Carabao Cup as their form struggled a little bit. They did continue to struggle for a while before getting a few wins on the trot, a lot of wins on the trot here, and then they've managed to go up again via the playoffs in front of 88,000 fans. At least they, actually no, they had less fans than Crystal Palace, who had 50,000, but they've managed to go through 2-1 for the 2nd time, coming from behind to win it. An 84th minute from Angel Luis Delbert, who's on loan from Middlesbrough. That's where they're picking their players up from now. But he managed to get one of the most crucial goals in United's history to get them back into the Premier League for the 2nd time now. And that's what we'll have to have a look at next episode, is whether they can remain in the Premier League this time. So if you look at their transfer history, you can see both times in the Championship they spent more money than they did in the Premier League, which is probably the wrong way round, you have to say. They did raise 26 million from player sales, but Scott Leak coming in for up to £21.5 million, a right winger. There's no way he's worth that much money, barely performing in the Championship. And yet they're selling players like Peter Rawlings, were worth 16.5 million, central midfielders that were putting in decent shifts. So a lot of questions to be asked of their transfer policy, really. But as you can see from the club details, good reputation now, back up to decent sort of levels for a Premier League club. Attendances around where they were before. Finances, 270 million in the bank. They'll be fine for that. And their facilities are starting to come back, but they need to expand the stadium. So a lot to look forward to for them. And I think if you guys drop enough likes on this video, I will do one more part for this experiment. We'll go forward 5 years and see if they do manage to get any further ahead. But drop a like on the video if you want to see that final part. Make sure to subscribe for more experiments as they come out in the near future. and do follow me on Twitter if you don't already. You can also support the channel on Patreon using the link in the description. But until next time, see ya.